Welcome to Talking Heads, where, as you know, each week we delve into the life of our guest to figure out what makes them tick. Well, this week I'm chatting with a woman whose passion in life is to work out what makes you tick. Baroness Susan Greenfield's focus is on the brain. How does the brain work? What's happening when it goes wrong? And what dangers does modern life pose to our grey matter? The Baroness Greenfield, welcome to Talking Heads.
Thank you, it's a great pleasure to be here.
It must have taken a little while to get used to the title, the Baroness.
I'm still not really used to it, and it does sound like something out of Alice in Wonderland. It's like the Red Queen or something like that, a little bit. Yeah.
There are many things you do, but really I suppose the anchor job is Professor of Pharmacology.
Yeah.
And you've had this lifelong interest in Alzheimer's and Parkinson's disease, both of which are very frightening.
Yeah, because I think you've put your finger on it, that for me, I define myself and the hub of everything I do, although one does many things, as someone who works on this really important problem. As you say, people are frightened of it. I remember when I was growing up, people were frightened of cancer. And my mum would call it the C word, thinking that even if you said it, you might get it. And
the big C.
The big C, and that sort of phrase, yeah. Whereas with neurodegenerative diseases, it's a bit like that was 50 years ago, in that you feel that once you're diagnosed with that, then there's no hope, there's nothing. I'll tell you my dream, and it is a dream.
What's your dream?
If you could have, like we have cholesterol tests, you know, we all go and have those kinds of things with the doctors now, and if you could go to your GP and have a simple blood test, so it would be cheap, it would be easy to do, like you have tests for cholesterol, and the doctor said, OK, the bad news is in 2 years' time you're going to get Alzheimer's symptoms because your marker is elevated. It's pre-symptomatic at the moment, but it's elevated. However, the good news is we now have a medication that stabilises cell loss. So if you take it right now, before the symptoms come on, the symptoms will never come on. And that's my dream, and that's what we're working on.
You've got these loads of connections with Australia.
I have.
You were a thinker in residence
I have. I'm very
in South
proud
Australia.
of this. Indeed, yes.
You have opened a branch of the Royal Institution in South Australia. You're an honorary Australian.
I am, yes.
So what does that mean?
Well, I didn't know myself until it was Australia Day, and I was at Australia House celebrating because of my connections with Australia. And my name was called out, and I was summoned up to the High Commissioner and presented with a little cup and a plaque and so on for a non-Australian national, but nonetheless someone with connections to Australia who's contributed to Australian life. And I like this bit, and who shows Australian values. That's right, who shows Australian values. You all know, Peter, you know, if you do public speaking, rule number one ever is you never drink before you speak, not even one glass. And there I was, you know, well into the Shiraz, and I said, is giving a speech, you know, in such a condition, showing Australian values. And everyone endorsed this idea, said it was, and we all sang, you know, Waltzing Matilda and a medley of Aussie songs, which I happen to know, and it was very nice. Working in the area of neurodegeneration, of Alzheimer's disease, especially in dementia, gives me a huge respect for that disease. And yes, of course I fear it, like everyone fears it. But at the same time, it makes you live for the day and really grab life by the throat. For me, having fun in the sense of making the most of what you have, and that's what my parents taught me. I always get angry when people make it out that I've come from a disadvantaged background, because that is absolutely not the case. My parents gave me the best possible upbringing and education I could possibly have had. That's your coat. Thank you. And I think just talking and having time with them and then giving time to me what would you like to drink? As a commodity that isn't always assured if you come from a grander type of family. Dad, the champagne. I was born in the west of London, near Richmond. I suppose you'd call it a blue-collar area. Mum was very bright, actually, and she won a special scholarship to a very grand school called Godolphin and Latimer, which is indeed the school that I was to go to much later. Look what we've got here.
Mum is a chorus girl. Yeah.
And look, you're pointing your toe. Although she was bright, her main love was dancing, and as soon as she could, she ran away and went on the stage and became a chorus girl. We dance the whole night through. Did you ever want to go? My father is 12 years older than my mother. He grew up in quite a strict Jewish community. So you can imagine when he finally married Mum, who was a Christian and a chorus girl and 12 years younger. And it says a lot for my mum and dad. They just ploughed ahead and did this. Don't you think? Mummy had the best legs?
Well, that's a lot of people say that.
Yeah. What do you think? Don't you think she has?
Of course.
When I think what kind of little girl I must have been, I think perhaps the single biggest factor is that I was an only child until I was 13. So there I was as the little princess, and the whole dream came to a shuddering crash when my parents had another baby. When I was at school, I actually detested science from start to finish, and I opted for Latin, Greek, ancient history, and maths as my advanced level subjects. Then I got promoted to all the Oxford and Cambridge streams because I realised you had to work, and if you worked, then it wasn't just winging it, you could actually do well.
One thing you should be cross-examined about is what taste you had of science in those days. You didn't like the taste.
No, I didn't like science at all. I had a few cursory introductions to the amoeba and distilling water, but no one told me
That'd be
why
interesting.
distilling water was interesting, and or indeed why I would want to know about the amoeba, because all you did was draw a circle, then you drew an hourglass, and then you drew two circles, and that was the amoeba reproducing itself. It just sort of split. Whereas in history and literature, and certainly in Latin and Greek, you could actually have ideas, and you could actually use the history or the literature as examples of something. And for me, it's always been using things as examples of more general ideas that I've always been very taken by. You know, why people fell in love, why wars started, what makes you the individual you are, compared to the amoeba. I mean, heavens, isn't it?
That's what I always thought too.
Yeah, exactly.
Susan, what turned you around at the age of 14?
It was a teacher called Veronica Lemon, and she taught Greek. And when I was 14, and we had to choose a third language at my school, and I fancied ancient Greek. I just thought it sounded exotic and interesting, and I used to like Greek mythology. And initially they said, no, we don't think you'd be up for it. I remember Miss Lemon saying to me, I make no bones about it, Greek is a difficult language. And do you really think that it's right for you? Yeah? And because then as now, and in other times in my life, I've been fortunate enough to meet people who've nonetheless given me a chance, even though they've said, look, actually, this is probably not going to work. Yeah, that's what turned me around. So basically it was Miss Lemon, because she was so exciting and so stimulating, and I was so wanted to do well so that she was impressed by me, that everything then changed.
Miss Lemon must be very flattered that you say this about her.
I hope she is. And we met later in life, and at my first book launch, she actually came to that. And I think she was a very good role model, and she excited and inspired me.
One thing that was very significant was your brother coming along.
It was, yes. And I used to torture him, as I said. He came along at just the wrong time.
Just slow that down. You used to torture him.
I used to torture him, yes. The torture would take various forms. The physical torture would be holding him up by his feet. The mental torture would be things like, the famous one is putting his water pistol in the oven and letting him observe through the glass door the melting of said water pistol.
So has he been very psychologically damaged by this?
Further mental torture was learning Shakespeare when he was 3. He was forced to learn Shakespeare and the Greek alphabet when he was 3. He could recite Macbeth, the famous one, out, brief candle, life is but a poor player. And he used to say, it's a tale told by an idiot just like Susan. He thought that was extemporising on Shakespeare very well. But if you'd said, what does it mean, out, brief candle? Of course, he wouldn't have understood that's a metaphor for death.
Must have been quite an experience being your brother.
And in fact, I often use that as an example of how you can learn things without understanding things, which is now endemic, of course. I suppose a really pivotal moment in my life was when I did a crash course in neuroscience. And in the morning, you had practical classes where you dissected a human brain. And that's a human brain, that's a person. And I thought, well, so I've got a bit under my fingernails. Would that be the bit that someone would love with? Would that be a particular memory? Would it be a hope? You know, and it came together, perhaps not particularly original notion, of the mental versus the physical. When I was in my 3rd year and doing my final exams in Oxford, I applied for a bioengineering course. I applied for a computer design course and got into both. And I think this horrified my tutor, who was a great mentor. And she saw me as a scientist and dispatched me to the pharmacology department. So I became a graduate student in neurochemistry, which didn't, given I didn't have chemistry qualifications, was quite a challenge. The research project I was given was actually a big one, and I think nowadays a graduate student wouldn't be entrusted with it. My supervisor had discovered that an enzyme was behaving in a way that enzymes don't need to behave in. And therefore, my task was to find out why and how this adventurous and much-travelled enzyme was coming out of the brain. What was it doing? And that was the breakthrough I had. This conventional enzyme was indeed a molecule in its own right, and most intriguing of all, originated from an area of the brain that is lost in Parkinson's disease. And that opened up what was to become my whole research career, and still is.
Here you are, this unlikely science graduate student.
Yeah.
What were you learning about science that you started to love, that you were so sceptical about?
I think what it was finally I grasped, and this is what I would suggest one should tell kids in school, that not everything is known, and that's always very exciting when there's a question that no one else knows.
It's not all settled.
It's not all settled. Just occasionally, an idea that you've had proves to be the case. And when that happens, it makes me tingle just saying it. Nothing else matters. You just feel so excited.
In your cohort at Oxford was Ian Chubb, who's now Vice-Chancellor of the ANU in Canberra.
In fact, I'm Chublet. He used to teach
Chublet,
and he used to call me Grunter for reasons he can tell you.
Who said, Susan, you won't make it.
He said I was a square peg in a round hole. Yeah.
So that was a bit of a challenge.
It was, and rather like Miss Lemon telling me that Greek would be too hard for me, I'm the kind of bloody-minded individual that if someone says, I can't